Namaste, lads and ladies. Welcome back finally to another tattoo story time. Anyway, yes, we are here to talk about yet again another one of my lovely tattoo story times. This one is quite close to my heart. You all know that I love my martial arts. I was a martial arts instructor for the longest time. I've decided to step away from it so I can focus on more other personal things in my life. I kind of want to go back into the roots of like the spiritual side of martial arts training and cultural experience basically, and what better way to do that than to visit these countries that have these martial arts. So what I'm going to be planning is sometime in the future I want to visit these countries that have these martial arts, like, you know, Hapkido, Kyokushin karate, Wing Chun, which is I'll be talking about in a minute, Zui Kwan, which is drunken boxing, and that's practically what I've got tattooed on my arm. It's Chinese writing of the word Sui Kwan, which obviously just means drunken boxing or the drunken way or something like that. And it's of a monkey. Let me show you what it looks like. There it is. That's what it looks like. If you can have a little bit closer look at it. It's got a little gourd there on the side of it. And it's in a nice little stance there. It's all tattered up and tarted from the age of it. And there is the Chinese lettering there. Now the reason why I got this is because for the longest time I've loved martial arts. Ever since I was a little boy, I've wanted to teach martial arts. I wanted to delve myself into martial arts. I've once said before that it started out with karate, and then it kind of like went from there. Like, I always loved Asian martial arts basically, but ever since then I have dabbled in other arts, like, you know, savate, which is basically like French kickboxing. I've done odd classes of kickboxing. I've done jiu-jitsu, judo. I've spent about 10 years as an assistant teacher at martial arts dojo, where they teach jiu-jitsu, Ryu style karate, and forms of ninpo, which is basically like ninja style techniques and stuff like that, if you know what I mean, which mostly just induced an awful lot of rolls, punches, kicks, and mixtures of it all together, really put together, with some Chinese medicinal meditation mixed in as one, basically. And I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed my time really with it, even though that it probably ended the way it did was probably not the way I'd liked it to have happened in a certain sense. I'll probably talk about that in another tattoo story time when I talk about my lotus tattoo on my back. I'll talk about that some other time because, yeah. Now I just want to talk about the beauty that is martial arts that got me into it, basically. When I first watched Drunken Master, which I believe was a film about Jackie Chan, it was along with like Bruce Lee with Enter the Dragon and all that stuff. I was never a fan of Jeet Kune Do when I first looked at it. I thought to myself, it's a bit too springy, it takes a little bit too much from different styles, and I thought to myself, like, that's a very hybridized version of fighting, which is a good thing, but unfortunately I feel like it's bred the upcoming sport UFC into something that I really don't see as something traditional. I mean, it's not meant to be traditional, it's meant to be like a hybridized version of, you know, a martial arts meshed into one, but I kind of don't like how it's gone from a traditional way of learning to this massive sport that has taken over and all that. But then you can say the same for like jiu-jitsu, judo, and boxing and taekwondo. They basically are sports within the Olympics and, you know, for like the big leagues and money and all that. The thing is with boxing, it's that it's had longer to, you know, kind of muddy itself in the waters of the eyes of entertainment and all that stuff, because there's an awful lot of dirty business that goes on in boxing, which is why I never really took it up, really. The only form of boxing that I ever did was Wing Chun, which was basically a art that was created in China. The lovely story behind that, which Ip Man explains, who Donnie Yen takes off beautifully, by the way, The man is a brilliant martial artist as well. Like I remember him talking to Ip Chung, who was the son of Ip Man, and Ip Chung taught him all the movements and all that. And I think he learned the movements within like 8 months, 12 months, something like that. The thing is with Wing Chun is it's a very fast, aggressive, forward, offensive style of fighting, where you are mostly keeping your center. So like say if I held my fist out in front of you and if I hit it, I shouldn't be moving back. But if I'm off to the right or to the left a little bit, you can see I'm a little bit off balance. But when I'm dead center, I shouldn't move basically. That is your center line, and that's what they teach you really within Wing Chun. The traditional form is mostly about, they teach you a few things, like there's 4 movements with kicking, where it's mostly, there's a thing called a ghost kick, where you would throw your fist and your hand out towards your opponent to kind of get within their space, and then you would also throw the kick out along with the punch, and that is obviously known as a ghost kick, where you would kick them in the groin or the front area of the knee basically, so you're kind of distracting them with the fist, and then you go in with the kick basically. And then there's the very famous 5-inch punch, which is basically an open hand like this, and then you roll it into a punch like that. And then there's the 1-inch punch, where, like say this is a surface, and this is basically the 1-inch, where you would just punch like that. An awful lot of people know that punch, but not an awful lot of people realise that the chain link punch, which is very, I think, overshadowed, like in some of the Donnie Yen films, basically. Like there's this one scene that I really enjoyed from the first film of Ip Man, where he was facing these 10 Kyokushin fighters, and if you know Kyokushin, it's like very tough to take on someone who is a Kyokushin fighter. Like a black belt Kyokushin, they train daily, every single week, every single month out of the year, to toughen their fists, their bodies, and all that. So the idea that he was easily dispensing them the way he did was kind of, I don't want to say bullshit, but it's kind of hard to believe really, like especially 10 at once. But of course there are some dramatizations within the film, but you can forgive that because it was an awesome scene. Anyway, so with Kyokushin fighters, the way they train, like to get to certain levels, they have to then do kumites with one another, which is basically for like sparring. So then you would have yourself, if you were doing the kumite, you would go against a certain amount of people, depending of either your choice or your sensei's choice. Normally it would be from 1 to 3, or 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 20, 30, and so on and so forth. I believe the creator, the founder of Kyokushin Karate, actually went up against 100 people in a row, which is beyond belief and really hard to imagine, really. And I believe he was so serious about the first time when the tournaments of the Kyokushin came around, he said to his dojo and his students that if Japan doesn't win this, if we don't win this, then I will kill myself. And it's just amazing the dedication that well, thankfully they won, so you know, he didn't like commit seppuku, thankfully, but it's just hard to believe that he was that serious and that driven for the art of Kyokushin, of Japan's pride for Kyokushin to prosper, that he was willing to, you know, commit suicide basically, which is interesting because of the way of Japanese people when they were disciplined, you know, like, because their discipline is like next to none other, apart from maybe the Chinese, because the Chinese and the Japanese have very immense discipline, and that's something an awful lot of Westerners could really take in and learn, really, because like with the way they do these things and handle these things is just immense to me, because imagine taking on 100 people, like let alone 5, like taking on 5 people compared to 100 people, you would be shattered. Not only that, but your entire body would be bruised and broken bones and all that stuff. It is just something about like that is just amazing, and I love the idea of being able to like tough it out through certain situations. And I have been in fights, I've been in an awful lot of scrapes when I was younger, and they've never been pleasant, really, you know. And I'm a pacifist, really, so I try my best to keep out of fights, but it was mostly due to the fact that an awful lot of my friends were involved with fights, or, you know, I was a bit of a defender of my friends, and, you know, when I have a friend who's been, like, maliciously attacked and all that stuff, I'm going to turn on you, you know, that switch is going to turn, basically, you know. You know, as you should with your friends, you know, you've got to defend your friends at all costs, really, and obviously you hope that they would do the same too, basically. And yes, so with Kyokushin and Wing Chung, with the way they mesh with one another is the idea of Bruce Lee, like, modernizing and popularizing the idea of Wing Chun with what it is now, even though he kind of moved away from it. He was never very, like, he was good at Wing Chun, but I don't think he was that dedicated to the one style for him to be able to get to the point of where Ip Man was, because Ip Man was like the greatest grandmaster of Wing Chun there ever was. So the story behind Wing Chun is a woman was going to be like wedded off to some random emperor, and she then made a deal with him that she would face him in combat, and if she beat him, then she would win her freedom. The man was very overcocky and believed that he could win, so he gave her about, I think, a week or two, I'm not so sure, maybe a month or something like that. I don't know the actual time frame of it, but she was able to, like, form her own style, and it worked very well for her. Like, it was a very straightforward style, basically, where you're centered off. You know, it works very well for smaller individuals like myself, like 5'5", you know, 5'4", so on and so forth, and women, of course. Women benefit the most from this art, really, because it's very aggressive, very offensive. You know, you're getting in their face all the time, so they can't, like, give you those socketing punches and kicks and grapples and all that stuff. You really have to overwhelm the opponent before they do anything to you. So it works in street fights as well so well, because when you center yourself off in front of, like, say 5 people, you know, they've got 5 people, they're scared to face you one-on-one, so that's why they've got the whole crew with them. So the idea with Wing Chun is to quickly incapacitate that one person, you know, chop to the head, you know, elbow to the head, give him a punch, carry on, and then toss him off to the next person, and then carry on like that, basically. And the way they punch is, their blocking is amazing. Like, there was this one film where Ip Man basically was a very younger version of himself, where Donnie Yen played Ip Man, where he was learning, like, a very different version of Wing Chun, where it had an awful lot of grapples into it, and there was this one pose which this master of his done, where normally you would be like this. You would be centered off straight, basically. I mean, I can't be straight, otherwise you'll just see fingers, so you would be centered off like this, but he actually had his palm down, like his palm up, sorry, and the other arm here, so then if a punch came, he can just grab that, pull that down, wrench it if he had to, and then pull him closer, chop towards the face, elbow to the head, backhand to the head, you know, to the face, wrench down on his face if he had to, and then, like, really vicious, like, throat grabs and stuff like that. So obviously back then, you know, it was seen as like kind of wrong to be like that vicious, you know, in a certain sense. But when it's like in a self-defense form, you have to think to yourself, well, he might have a weapon or something, so, you know, him stabbing me, for me, like, you know, giving him a little bit of a nick on his neck for, like, trying to do that, I think that's a fair trade-off, basically. So I kind of wanted the Sui Kwon writing on there as well, because when I took up drunken boxing, I was never taught it, so I learnt it all from memory, from watching the films and reading it in books, and just repetition, repetition, repetition. So the way Sui Kwon works is that you would have, like, this drunken motion, like you seemed like you were over the top tipsy. So you had all these motions where you looked like you was drinking, and then you would snap back at them, basically. So it's to lull them into you, and it's the same with, like, monkey styles and snake style and, like, tiger style and stuff like that, because Kung Fu and Kalaare Patu is the eldest oldest, most basic form of martial art you can ever think of. But I don't mean to be disrespectful by the word basic, because to learn a martial art, you have to learn everything about the basics of it for it to flourish within your being, basically, to be a martial artist. With Culinary Power 2, it was meant to be like the predating martial arts to Kung Fu, basically. That's where Kung Fu and most other basic martial arts take their stances from, like the horse stance, acrobatic jumps, open hand spins and kicks and crescents, and like weaponry and stuff like that. The High Sultan's guards would always use like swords and shields, and they would like acrobatically attack one another as a way of training, because only the top Sultan's guards would be, capable enough to take care of their, ruler whilst learning this art, basically. It was a very in-depth martial art where it took 6 years of training with the shield and cutlass to be able to defend your leader, basically. And they also had a very unique weapon, which was like a whip sword, basically. So you would like whip it towards the ground, and it would cause like sparks to flame. Like, imagine that whipping towards your head. That would decapitate you, no problem at all, basically. Which is why I found like the war of like the hot gates at Thermopylae very interesting, between like Persia and the Spartans, because even though Persia had like a mass amount of men, like 70,000 odd men, they tried to overplay it by saying, oh, it's like in the millions. No, it was like 70,000, and against Leonidas' 300, then pulled down to 298, because two of them had to leave. One was sick and the other one was injured. Or no, I think Leonidas actually sent one of them to be a messenger. It didn't matter in the end for those two, because it did matter, because one of them like was given so much shame because he didn't die with the rest of his soldiers and all that. Because the other one basically decided to join another battle to kind of reclaim his honor of dying in battle. And the other one was more of a storyteller. He told the story of the Spartans and what they did, basically, at Thermopylae for all of Greece, basically. And then later on, at the Battle of Plataea, that's when he then, went into battle and reclaimed some of his honor in death, basically. So it still stands for the 300, because they were all brave. They went to war to like kind of slow the Persians down, to give Greece enough time to be able to come back and help fight to keep the Persians off of their land, basically. And why I speak of the Persians is because they had like one of the biggest empires like in the early BC eras, basically, like expanded most of Asia and most of North Africa, basically. So then when it came to Greece, it was kind of hard to believe that this very small nation of Greeks could handle like the amount of forces that Persians like threw at them. But it was mostly due to like strategic like planning and a very well defended phalanx that they were able to overcome a huge force. That's why I like love history when it comes to like battles and combat and stuff like that, because it's not always the biggest number of armies to win a battle or the strongest soldiers. It's always the smartest. It's always the most forth thinking, basically. That's why I always love to read about Sun Tzu, really, like his art of war and all that stuff, because it's so interesting, like the things that he was able to do to out like maneuver and outthink the enemy is so brilliant, and it works to modern day times, especially in your own like in your work life and your own like way of like living, basically, as a person, because it helps you to think better. It helps you to imagine things better. It makes you like appreciate what you have and be able to help you go after what you really want in life, basically. That's why martial arts to me is as important as breathing. It's as important as family. That's why I have it on my body as a tattoo, to remind me that it was martial arts that helped me in those dark times, when things kind of crept in that shouldn't have crept in, basically. It was there to discipline me. That's why I always believe that martial arts is one of the key things to help keep a man sane, in a certain sense, really. And I met an awful lot of friends in martial arts. I met a couple of my lovers through martial arts, and I also like experienced a father figure that I never thought I could, experience, really, especially after, the whole debacle when I was 10, when my dad left and all that. So it was kind of a way of me to be able to overcome certain parts of my livelihood when I was a kid, and then as I grew older, it kind of like molded me into what I am today, basically. So I have to be thankful towards martial arts for instilling that form of like never die, like determination, never give up attitude, basically, you know. And I normally sometimes fall on dark times. Like I think of those dark times in my head to help me get through like a horrible workout or, you know, something like going on in my life. And I think, you know, I'm never going back there. I'm never going back to that dark period in my life. And if I am going to go back there, I will not go back there at my own choice. I will not go back there at my own leisure. You either have to drag me kicking and screaming for me to get to that point again, basically. You know, so that's how much martial arts means to me, you know. That's how much the importance of culture and like the teachings that we have for one another. It doesn't matter what borderlines we have when it comes to martial arts. We all are in it for one thing, and that is self-healing and self-improvement and, you know, cultural appreciation, basically. And that's why I really like attract myself to as many martial arts as I can, really. You know, it might sound disloyal, but really, the way I think of it, it's a way of improving one's mind and his own mental health and physical health to be able to learn as much as he can about what is in front of him in a certain sense. Like if I could take an extract from Bruce Lee's quote with that interview he had one time. He said, "Be formless, shapeless, like water." Now, if you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Now, water can flow or it could crash. Be water, my friend. And that's why I really love that quote, because it's true. When you put yourself in those situations, you want to flow with it, not crash and burn. Which is why I like his explanation of how the different forms of like Japanese and Chinese like martial arts like mix, really. He's not saying one is better than the other. That's not true. It's just the way they work with how, like say with karate, it's more like a hammer hitting into a stone object, basically. Whereas a Chinese martial art is like a whip as it wraps around the body and you hear a twang, basically, you know. They both get the job done, but in different ways. And that's what is so beautiful about it, is that no matter the culture, no matter how different something looks, at its basics, at its core, it's what it is. It's discipline, hard work, and just outright beauty and love for what we can achieve when we put our minds to something more greater than ourselves. So yeah, that was my little tattoo story time of my like thoughts and processes on martial arts and what it has done for me to turn me into who I am today, basically. It's definitely something you shouldn't slack on, like if you want to learn self-defense or to just better your own mental health. You know, even boxing, just take up a boxing class. You will never underestimate how good it feels to let out your frustrations on a heavy bag. You know, it might start out that way, but then later on you can find the appreciation for what art you choose to do, basically. Either it be jiu-jitsu, boxing, Wing Chung, karate, you know, hapkido, and all these other beautiful martial arts around the world, basically, you know. So I can only be thankful to, like, all of these dedicated people that have continued the teachings of it throughout, like, beyond the ages of time, basically, you know, because I hope to keep this, like, thing alive, because it was so great to be a teacher and to watch the children enjoy themselves, like to teach the children of the future these techniques and these life lessons, basically. It wasn't just techniques, we taught them life lessons and how to better themselves and how to treat people better, basically. That's the important lesson you can take from a class of martial arts, basically. It's to better oneself and to better others around you. So there's that. So with that, lads and ladies, I thank you all ever so much for joining me for another one of my tattoo story times. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully, yes, I will let you all know quickly. The Rugby World Cup 2021 has been moved forward for, you know, COVID and all that crap. The Women's World Cup will be in a couple of days' time. Well, I say about 5 days' time, because it will be taking place on the 8th of October. I will be covering certain games that will be quite interesting. So I'll be covering England, France, New Zealand, and Canada's games. The other teams I will watch, but if they're not interesting, I probably won't do them. What I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna tape the entire thing because obviously that's just gonna get taken down. So I'm going to basically do my reaction to the last 10 minutes of the game, just so I can keep you updated on what's been going on with it. So that will be a little vlog for you guys to enjoy, whilst I'm also enjoying myself watching the World Cup. England have been great this year. We've had 25 consecutive wins. That is probably the best any team from any rugby club has ever done, or any nation has ever done over the entirety of rugby. New Zealand have got themselves a new coach who was actually very responsible for helping the 2015 and 2011 New Zealand team to win their World Championships. So, it's nice to know that they've actually gotten rid of their old coach, who was a misogynistic asshole, who was just basically body shaming and bullying the women. It just wasn't good all around for them. So it was just nice to see them get rid of him and get a coach that actually can see what potential that the New Zealand girls have. I mean, potential, they're basically 7-time world champions, 5 times I think, something like that. And England will be going for their 3rd World Cup championship this year. Fingers crossed we can do it, but we'll have to keep an eye out on the French, Canada and New Zealand, because those 3 will probably be the most dangerous teams for us to go against. But it's going to be great. I'm really going to enjoy watching it. So with that, lads and ladies, I thank you ever so much for watching, and just have yourselves a beautiful, lovely, fantastic day. Take care, my friends.